In the bustling animal shelter, where countless stories of hope and despair intermingled, one dog's constant crying stood out. Baxter, a beautiful gray pit bull, seemed inconsolable, his whimpers echoing through the hallways. Dr. Nolan, a seasoned veterinarian, visited the shelter for a routine checkup but found himself drawn to Baxter's kennel, sensing that the dog's distress was more than just a longing for a home. It was only after a thorough examination that Dr. Nolan uncovered the heart-wrenching truth behind Baxter's tears, leading him to make an unexpected decision. All the staff members of the shelter where Baxter lived knew about his heartbreaking cries. It was kind of hard not to know about them, actually, as they echoed through the whole building. Frederique, one of the staff members, had addressed them to her manager many times, asking if they could get Baxter checked, but he kept refusing, saying it was just because Baxter was a drama queen. Frederique knew there could be more to it. Baxter didn't only howl, he actually cried tears as well. His eyes were covered in gooey mush from all the crying, something her manager didn't know because she was the only one who checked up on Baxter every day, giving him cuddles and drying his tears. She felt incredibly sorry for the poor animal but didn't know what to do. One day, the shelter staff was informed that a veterinarian would be visiting to give some of the animals a routine check. Hopeful, Frederique had grabbed the information sheet, looking for Baxter's name. She reviewed the list of animals 5 times before the truth she dreaded finally sunk in. Baxter's name was not on the list. Frederique was heartbroken for him. How could her manager do this to the poor animal? Was he enjoying it or something? She shot an angry glance at him when he wasn't looking. She couldn't do more than that, as she didn't want to be fired. If she didn't work at the shelter anymore, no one would give Baxter his extra love and cuddles. No, she had to stay for him. The vet arrived when Baxter was still sleeping. He began to work down his list, going by every kennel that was on it. Little kittens, who were just brought in a few days ago, needed special medicine for their sneezing disease. A dog had to get his blood tested, and so on. The vet worked amazingly fast, but luckily not fast enough. After a few hours, Frederique heard what she was waiting for. Baxter's howls began to echo through the building. The vet immediately looked up from what he was doing and frowned. "Do you hear that too?" he asked Frederique. Frederique wanted to answer and explain the situation, but her manager interrupted her. "Oh, that's nothing. Probably just a dog wanting a treat." Actually, Frederique followed quickly after. "That is Baxter, one of our dogs. He cries like that all day, every day." She looked her manager fiercely in the eyes. Then she turned her attention back to the vet. "Baxter is a very sweet pit bull, but I fear something could be wrong with him. Why else would a dog cry like that all the time?" the manager sighed. "As I've said to my employee many times before, there is nothing wrong with Baxter. Please, Dr. Nolan, continue with what you are doing." The manager managed to distract Dr. Nolan with another animal in need, keeping him from going to Baxter. Frederique couldn't help but wonder why her manager was so against letting Dr. Nolan see Baxter. As the day went on, Frederique observed the vet closely. She watched how he reacted to Baxter's whimpers and cries. She could see Dr. Nolan was torn between listening to the manager and just having a quick look at Baxter. She decided to strike up a conversation with him as soon as the manager would be far away from them so he couldn't hear. "Dr. Nolan," she carefully began, "if you want to have a look at Baxter, you can follow me in about 15 minutes. Dr. Nolan intriguingly looked up. He leaned in and whispered, "How did you know? I keep thinking about that poor dog." Frederique smiled. 15 minutes. Then my manager goes on his break. Meet me at the green door." Frederique couldn't hold in her happiness. She walked away, smiling from ear to ear, hoping her manager wouldn't notice. This was a step in the right direction. Maybe, just maybe, Dr. Nolan would find something small, something easily treatable. She just hoped he would be able to make Baxter feel better again, as this was no way of living for the poor animal. 15 minutes later, Frederique stood waiting by the green door. Like clockwork, her manager walked past her. "I'm going on my break," he said as she looked at his phone. Frederique knew whenever her manager was on his break, nothing could get him to come out of the break room. He would just be focused on his phone and nothing else. "All right, see you in 15 minutes, she said happily. Suddenly, her manager stopped in his tracks. He looked up from his phone and stared at Frederique. Her heart raced in her chest as she waited for him to say something. "Don't talk about Baxter to Dr. Nolan, all right? I can get you fired." Frederique slowly nodded her head. Was that a threat? Just as the break room door closed, Dr. Nolan popped up beside Frederique. "Are you sure you want to risk your job for this dog?" he asked her worriedly. "Yes," she said determinedly, quickly opening the green door. Baxter's howls immediately intensified as they were now closer than ever to his kennel. "This way," she said as she began to walk down a long hall of empty kennels. Dr. Nolan couldn't believe his eyes. Why is Baxter tucked away in this hallway full of empty kennels? Is he sick? Frederique felt a lump form in her throat. "My manager can't stand Baxter's constant howling and whining, so we moved him to this kennel where the sounds are muffled." A tear rolled down her cheek as she thought about how lonely he must always feel. In the dimly lit hallway, Dr. Nolan and Frederique approached Baxter's kennel with caution. The air was thick with the scent of disinfectant and the muffled sounds of distant barking. Frederique's eyes were sympathetic, while Dr. Nolan's held a professional curiosity. They paused at the door, preparing themselves to meet the dog whose cries had echoed so poignantly through the shelter. The kennel door creaked open and they stepped inside. Baxter, a gray pit bull with soulful eyes, cowered in the corner. His body was tense, his gaze wary. Dr. Nolan knelt down, maintaining a respectful distance. He extended a hand slowly, palm down, inviting Baxter to investigate. The vet's movements were deliberate and gentle, a silent promise of no harm. Baxter's nose twitched as he sniffed the air, his eyes locked on Dr. Nolan's hand. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, with a tentative step, Baxter edged closer. His nose touched the vet's hand, and a brief examination began. Dr. Nolan's touch was light, his scrutiny careful, looking for signs of pain or discomfort in the quiet pit bull. As Dr. Nolan examined Baxter, he spoke in a calm, soothing tone. His words were a balm meant to reassure and comfort the distressed animal. "You're safe here, Baxter. We're here to help you," he murmured. The tension in Baxter's muscles began to ease. His breathing slowed, and his eyes softened. It was as though he understood the vet's compassionate intent. Dr. Nolan continued his gentle examination, and Baxter's trust visibly grew. The dog's initial hesitation gave way to a cautious acceptance, and then a small miracle happened. Baxter's tail, which had been tucked firmly between his legs, began to wag tentatively. It was a small gesture, but in the quiet of the kennel, it was as significant as a shout of joy. A bond, fragile but real, began to form between Baxter and Dr. Nolan. Frederique watched, her heart swelling with hope. With Baxter's hesitant approval, Dr. Nolan began a more detailed examination. His expert hands moved over Baxter's body, feeling for abnormalities, checking joints, and examining eyes and ears. Each movement was methodical and careful, designed to cause the least stress possible. Dr. Nolan's brow furrowed as he noted each response from Baxter, his professional instinct telling him something was amiss. Frederique watched, her hands clasped together, as the vet's concern grew palpable. Frederique stood by the door, her ears attuned to every sound. Her gaze was fixed on the hallway outside, ready to signal any approach. The anxiety of being discovered wrestled with her desire to help Baxter. She knew the stakes were high if caught. It wasn't just her job on the line, but Baxter's chance at a better life, too. Her commitment to the dog was unwavering, her resolve steeling her against the fear. Time seemed to warp within the confines of Baxter's kennel. Each second ticked by with an increasing weight, the risk of the manager's return looming over them like a storm cloud. Dr. Nolan worked with efficient speed, but the thoroughness needed for a proper diagnosis couldn't be rushed. Frederique's eyes constantly flickered to the clock, the hands moving inexorably forward, bringing them closer to potential discovery. In between his focused examination, Dr. Nolan and Frederique exchanged whispers laden with worry. "We need more time," the vet murmured, his voice barely audible. Frederique nodded, whispering back, "I know. I'm trying to think of something, anything to delay him." Their conversation was a delicate dance of concern and urgency, a shared understanding that Baxter's well-being was worth every risk they were taking. As Dr. Nolan palpated Baxter's abdomen, a sudden clatter from the hallway caused all three to freeze. Baxter's ears perked up, and Frederique's head snapped towards the door. The noise was brief, but it shattered the tense calm of the kennel. Dr. Nolan paused, his hands still on Baxter, as they all held their breath, listening. Was it the manager or just another day-to-day sound at the shelter? The moment stretched, filled with silent anticipation. The moment of stillness shattered as the door swung open with a force that echoed through the kennel. The manager stood at the threshold, his face contorted with anger and disbelief. His unexpected entrance felt like a cold gust of wind, instantly changing the atmosphere from one of focused care to defensive alarm. Dr. Nolan's hands stilled on Baxter, who whimpered at the sudden tension. Frederique turned, her face paling as she met the manager's furious gaze. Time seemed to stop. Dr. Nolan, Frederique, and even Baxter were statuesque, each processing the sudden intrusion. The manager's heavy breathing was the only sound in the otherwise silent room. His eyes darted from the vet's hands on Baxter to Frederique's anxious stance. The air was thick with unsaid accusations and fear. It was a moment of collective realization. They were caught, and the consequences were about to unfold. The silence broke as the manager stormed in, his voice booming with anger. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his eyes fixed on Dr. Nolan. Frederique moved to speak, but the manager's glare silenced her. "You," he pointed at Dr. Nolan, "were only authorized to check certain animals, and you," his gaze swung to Frederique, "are complicit in this deception." His words were like daggers, and the tension escalated with each accusation. Despite the manager's towering rage, Dr. Nolan remained calm, his posture solid and unyielding. "Baxter needed attention," he stated firmly, his voice a stark contrast to the manager's. Ignoring his distress would be negligent and unethical. His protective stance over Baxter was a clear sign of his commitment. Frederique, inspired by his courage, stood a little taller. Dr. Nolan's defiance was a beacon of hope in the chaos, a sign that Baxter's welfare was the priority. The manager's face reddened at Dr. Nolan's defiance. "I run this shelter, and I decide what's best," he snapped. Turning to Frederique, his voice softened into a menacing calm. "You've crossed a line, Frederique. Come with me now, or you're fired." His ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and final. Frederique's heart raced. Her job, her passion, was on the line. Yet, leaving Baxter felt like abandoning a friend in his darkest hour. With a heavy heart, Frederique complied, her eyes lingering on Baxter's fearful gaze as she was led away. Each step felt like a betrayal, not only to Baxter but to her own principles. As they exited, her mind raced, searching for any way to continue helping. The manager's grip was firm, a constant reminder of the power he held over her future at the shelter. Frederique seized an opportunity when the manager was momentarily distracted. She slipped into a nearby storage closet, her breath shallow and quick. Pressing her ear against the thin wall, she could just make out the muffled tones of the conversation outside. Her heart pounded, not just with fear of being discovered, but with a desperate hope that Dr. Nolan could make a difference for Baxter. Dr. Nolan's voice was steady and insistent. "Baxter is in pain, and it's our duty to help him," the manager retorted, his voice laced with frustration. "We have dozens of animals here. I can't justify the cost for one." Their debate was a clash of perspectives, one grounded in compassion and ethical duty, the other in the harsh reality of shelter management and limited resources. Despite the manager's resistance, Dr. Nolan persisted, his words carrying the weight of his profession's ethical standards. "Turning a blind eye to suffering is not an option. We must do what's right, not what's easy," he argued. His calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the manager's agitation, lending strength and credibility to his stance. In the closet, Frederique held her breath, hanging on every word. The manager, however, was unyielding. "Rules and budgets are in place for a reason," he countered. His voice was firm, reflecting a mind closed to any argument. "We can't make exceptions." The conversation had reached an impasse, with both sides standing firm in their beliefs. The air was charged with tension, the outcome uncertain but critically important for Baxter's future. Crouched in the dark, Frederique strained to hear every word. The closet was cramped, and the lingering smell of cleaning supplies filled the air, but discomfort was the least of her concerns. Each sentence spoken outside felt like a lifeline for Baxter, and she clung to them, hoping beyond hope that Dr. Nolan's words would sway the manager. Outside, the debate grew heated. "Dr. Transcendence by a seer." Nolan's voice rose, a rare show of frustration. "How can we call ourselves a shelter if we don't shelter those in need?" The manager shot back, his tone equally raised. "We have to think about the bigger picture, the other animals." Their voices echoed down the hallway, a verbal tug-of-war over Baxter's fate. "Dr." Nolan took a deep breath, regaining his composure. "Baxter's suffering isn't just a matter of policy, it's a matter of rights. The right to comfort, to care," he stated firmly. "We have a moral obligation to every creature under our roof." His words were a beacon in the darkness, a reminder of the higher principles at stake. There was a pause, and then the manager's voice returned, softer this time, tinged with uncertainty. "It's just… we have so many to think about," he faltered. It was a small change, but significant. Frederique held her breath, sensing the shift. Dr. Nolan's relentless advocacy was beginning to crack the wall of the manager's resistance. Dr. Nolan seized the moment, his voice now infused with a passionate plea. "Imagine Baxter as not just one of many, but as someone's future companion, a being capable of love and joy. We have the power to heal him, to give him that future." His plea was heartfelt, his conviction clear. In the darkness of the closet, Frederique felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Baxter's cries would finally be answered. The manager regained his composure, his voice firm. "I understand your point, but the shelter operates on a tight budget. We can't afford to treat every case like this." The words were practical, a reflection of the constant struggle to balance limited resources with the needs of many. It was a reality that loomed over every decision he made, including Baxter's fate. Dr. Nolan's response was immediate and impassioned. "But consider the greater cost of neglect," he urged. "Ignoring Baxter's pain doesn't just harm him, it diminishes us, our humanity. We can't let financial constraints blind us to suffering. We must find a way." His plea was a powerful reminder of the ethical costs at stake, costs that went beyond dollars and cents. Continuing his advocacy, Dr. Nolan spoke of Baxter's condition with a conviction that resonated in the cramped space. "Baxter's well-being should be our priority. He's in pain, and we have the means to alleviate it. To do otherwise would be a failure of our duty as caregivers." His words were more than just a plea. They were a testament to his commitment to those in his care. Despite Dr. Nolan's impassioned reasoning, the manager remained resistant. His voice was a mix of weariness and resolve. "My hands are tied by the shelter's policies and budget. I can't make exceptions." It was a battle of wills, a standoff between practicality and compassion. The tension in the air was palpable, a reflection of the high stakes for both Baxter and those fighting for his care. Dr. Nolan, sensing the critical moment, made one final appeal. "I understand the challenges you face," he acknowledged, "but Baxter's situation is urgent. Let's work together to find a solution. Compassion doesn't have to be a casualty of budget constraints." His voice was fervent, imbued with a hope that compassion could indeed find a way through the thicket of financial and bureaucratic hurdles. Dr. Nolan's voice took on a solemn tone. "Baxter can't speak for himself, so we must be his voice." His suffering is silent, but profound. He described the subtle signs of Baxter's distress, the ones only a careful observer would notice. Every whimper, every shiver speaks volume. We can't ignore his plea because he whispers it in silence. With each word, Dr. Nolan painted a vivid picture of Baxter's plight, his need for care and comfort. Imagine the constant pain, the confusion, the fear Baxter must feel. He doesn't understand why he's hurting or if it will ever end. We have the power to change that, to offer him relief. His portrayal was emotional, intended to touch the heart of the matter and the heart of the listener. The urgency in Dr. Nolan's voice grew. Baxter's condition won't wait for budget approvals or better times. His pain is present, persistent, and worsening. Every day we delay, he suffers more. The echoes of Baxter's cries seemed to resonate, in his words, a haunting reminder of the stakes. "We must act, and we must act now." The manager was silent, his expression inscrutable. Dr. Nolan's words hung in the air, a challenge to the status quo. It was a moment of reflection, of internal struggle. The manager's eyes flickered to the floor, then to the door where Baxter waited. The weight of the decision was heavy, the moral implications clear and pressing. As the conversation dwindled, the manager finally spoke, his voice low. "I need to think about this. It's not just about Baxter, it's about every animal here." He paused, his gaze distant. "Give me until tomorrow." The words were neither a yes nor a no, but they left a sliver of hope. Dr. Nolan nodded, understanding the complexity of the decision. The conversation ended, but the issue remained unresolved. Baxter's fate hanging in the balance. Dr. Nolan, after a moment of heavy silence, decided it was time for full disclosure. "I suspect Baxter suffers from a chronic condition, one that's been causing his constant distress," he revealed. His voice was steady, but the gravity of the revelation was undeniable. He explained the symptoms and potential causes, laying bare the truth they all needed to face. The manager's eyes widened, and Frederic, still hidden in the closet, gasped silently. The possibility of a chronic condition hadn't crossed their minds. The manager's stance softened as the reality of Baxter's pain became undeniable. Dr. Nolan's revelation was a shock to the system, a wake-up call that changed the entire dynamic of the conversation. The weight of the truth settled heavily in the room. Dr. Nolan's diagnosis wasn't just a statement of medical fact, it was a testament to Baxter's silent suffering. The manager looked away, his previous certainty shaken. Frederic felt tears well up, her heart aching for Baxter. The gravity of the situation was now undeniable, and with it came a renewed sense of urgency. The manager's voice, once firm and authoritative, now carried a hint of doubt. I didn't realize," he murmured. The severity of Baxter's condition was a reality check, a moment that forced him to reconsider his stance. It was a subtle but significant shift, the first crack in the wall of resistance he'd built. With Dr. Nolan's revelation, a new understanding began to dawn. The manager's eyes, previously narrowed in frustration, now reflected a growing empathy. Baxter's cries were no longer just noise. They were a call for help, a plea for relief from constant pain. The revelation shed new light on the situation, transforming Baxter from a nuisance in the manager's eyes to a patient in need of care. The next day, the manager gave his reluctant approval. Dr. Nolan wasted no time, putting together a comprehensive treatment plan for Baxter. It was a mix of medication for immediate relief and long-term therapy for ongoing care. As the first dose was administered, a sense of cautious optimism filled the room. This was the first step on Baxter's road to recovery. Within days, the signs of improvement were small but unmistakably positive. Baxter's constant whimpers began to subside, replaced by moments of quiet restfulness. His eyes, once clouded with pain, showed glimpses of the gentle spirit underneath. Each small sign of progress was a victory, celebrated silently by Frederic and Dr. Nolan, who watched over him with a mix of professional satisfaction and genuine care. As the treatment continued, the bond between Dr. Nolan and Baxter grew stronger. The vet's visits were no longer met with fear but with a wagging tail and a nuzzle. Baxter's trust in Dr. Nolan was complete, his eyes following the vet's every move. It was a relationship built on mutual respect and a shared journey toward healing. Frederic watched Baxter's transformation with a mixture of awe and joy. Each day brought a new change, a small step toward the lively and happy dog she knew Baxter could be. She would often sit by his side, talking to him and offering gentle strokes. Watching Baxter's slow return to health filled her with a profound sense of gratitude and hope. Each day, Baxter's cries of pain became less frequent, his moments of peace more prolonged. There was a growing sense that, although the journey was long and the outcome uncertain, there was real hope for a pain-free future. Baxter's resilience and the dedication of those caring for him were turning the tide. Hope was on the horizon, a beacon guiding them through the recovery process. The manager's perspective began to shift subtly over time, witnessing Baxter's gradual recovery and the genuine care from Dr. Nolan and Frederic made him see the animals in his care through a new lens. They were no longer just numbers in his shelter, they were beings capable of feeling and deserving of compassion. This realization was the first step in a profound personal transformation. The change in the manager's attitude had a ripple effect throughout the shelter. Procedures were reevaluated, and more attention was given to the individual needs of each animal. Staff members were encouraged to voice their concerns, leading to a more compassionate and ethical approach to animal care. The shelter was slowly transforming, all because one dog's plight had opened their eyes to a better way. The day Baxter was ready to leave, the shelter was bittersweet. Frederique had grown to love the brave pitbull, and saying goodbye was more challenging than she'd anticipated. As she hugged him one last time, tears streamed down her face. She whispered words of love and encouragement, knowing this was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another for Baxter. Dr. Nolan, who had been Baxter's constant advocate and healer, decided to adopt him. He had seen Baxter through his darkest days and couldn't bear to part with the dog who had shown such courage and trust. As they left the shelter together, it was a moment of pure joy. Baxter was going to a forever home where he would be loved and cared for as he deserved. Baxter's journey from a scared, pained creature to a beloved pet symbolized hope and the profound connection between humans and animals. His story left an indelible mark on the shelter and its inhabitants. It was a reminder that compassion can change lives and that every animal, no matter how hopeless their situation seems, deserves a chance for happiness and health. Baxter's transformation from despair to hope was a testament to the power of love and care.